Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely hack your neurobiology, conquer procrastination, and help you build some absolutely unstoppable daily momentum. Look, if you've ever felt just totally paralyzed by your to-do list, you're not alone. And more importantly, it's not a character flaw. By the end of our time together, you'll have a ridiculously practical, science-backed framework to rewire your brain for action, using something called the 1-3-5 daily rule. Let's jump right into exactly how your brain works and how we can finally get it working for you. So, let's dive into that incredibly frustrating feeling. You know the one. You're frozen, maybe a little sweaty, just staring at a ticking clock. It's a struggle so many of us face every single day. You know exactly what you need to do, you know the deadline is barreling towards you, and yet there's this invisible wall stopping you from typing that first word or making that first call. The gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it feels massive. But why does this actually happen?
Well, you probably think it's laziness, right? Actually, scratch that. It's not a willpower failure at all. It's a physical neurochemical state. You see, in highly focused people, a phasic dopamine signal, which is basically the chemical burst that initiates action, arrives right at the start of a task. But if you're struggling with procrastination, that dopamine signal is severely delayed. Your brain's internal reward stopwatch is totally out of sync. This means the chemical motivation to act just doesn't show up until the task is almost over, or until a looming deadline creates absolute panic.
To make matters even trickier, we're also dealing with something called limbic friction. Whenever you face a daunting or complex project, your brain's emotional center, the amygdala, detects it as a literal psychological threat. It brings up the fear of failure or judgment, and it makes you want to frantically run away from that giant, scary document. Your limbic system goes into total overdrive, basically begging your prefrontal cortex for a quick, comfortable escape route to relieve all that stress.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates why we do things like furiously organize our pens while a massive, important proposal just gathers dust. We call this productive procrastination. Your brain is engaging in reward substitution in the dorsal striatum. By cleaning your desk or just checking some emails, you get a quick, temporary hit of dopamine. It momentarily soothes that limbic friction and drops your anxiety. But let's be real, it doesn't actually move the needle on the core work you're supposed to be doing.
On top of that, we have a concept from temporal motivation theory called temporal discounting. This perfectly explains why the satisfaction of finishing a massive project next month feels completely useless to your dopamine-starved brain today. Simply put, if a reward is far off in the future, its motivational pull drops dramatically. That distant trophy just has no chance of competing with the immediate, easy distraction of the smartphone sitting right in front of you.
So, here is the absolutely crucial question. How do we bypass this biological resistance? How do we manufacture that starting momentum we desperately need when our amygdala is screaming at us to run away and our dopamine is just nowhere to be found? Willpower alone is not going to cut it, because we're fighting millions of years of evolutionary brain chemistry. We need a targeted intervention.
Section 1. The 1-3-5 Daily Rule. The ultimate dopamine warm-up routine. It all starts with setting a hard limit. By restricting your daily to-do list to exactly 9 items total, you instantly stop your prefrontal cortex from drowning in the anxiety of an endless backlog. When your brain sees a list of 40 items, it triggers that massive limbic threat response we just talked about. But when it sees just 9 carefully chosen tasks, it perceives a manageable challenge, not an overwhelming threat.
Structuring your day like this gives you a much-needed boundary. The 1-3-5 rule breaks your 9 tasks into specific weights. 1 heavy anchor task, that's your big rock for the day, 3 manageable medium tasks that are meaningful but won't drain your whole day, and 5 small rapid-fire quick wins. This exact distribution perfectly balances high-value output with achievable constant progress.
Now here is the real neurohack of this whole system. Traditional advice always tells you to eat the biggest frog first and tackle the hardest thing immediately. But look, if you lack dopamine, that frog is a brick wall. So we reverse the order. Step 1, list your 9 tasks. Step 2, and this is absolutely vital, attack those 5 small tasks immediately. You don't just jump to the top of the stairs. You take the small steps first to build momentum toward the heavy lifting. And when we say small tasks, we are talking about actions that take less than 5 minutes each. The barrier to entry here has to be so incredibly low that your amygdala doesn't even bother sounding the alarm. If a task takes 2 minutes, your brain doesn't perceive it as a threat that requires escape. The action should feel as effortless as stepping over a tiny pebble, requiring practically zero executive function or willpower.
Because here's what happens. Every single time you tick off one of those tiny, under 5-minute tasks, you trigger a microdose of dopamine. This lights up your brain and fires up your internal engine. You are effectively shifting that delayed dopamine signal right to the very beginning of your workday. This series of quick wins provides the literal spark that warms up your mental engine, giving you the exact neurochemical fuel you need for the big anchor task. So what does this look like in the real world? We're talking about replying to 2 short emails, tossing a calendar invite on the schedule, dropping a quick update in Slack, or honestly, just clearing the old coffee cups off your desk. After just 10 minutes of knocking out these simple actions, that heavy morning dread completely vanishes. You feel deeply satisfied, capable, and you've generated the activation energy needed to finally open that massive project without completely freezing up.
Section 2. ADHD and Task Momentum. Let's talk about hacking the baseline.
This is an absolute superpower for ADHD brains, which often suffer from baseline dopamine deficits, meaning everyday tasks can feel neurochemically overwhelming. This framework is a game changer because it essentially gamifies the morning. By stringing together quick wins, it provides the exact immediate rewards needed to bypass task paralysis. You're defeating temporal discounting by offering yourself instant gratification, anchoring the reward in the present moment, and building natural, irresistible momentum.
And, our energy levels are highly variable, especially for those with ADHD. You might have a day of intense hyperfocus, followed by a day of profound fatigue. That's why the system is so great. It's flexible. On days where fatigue hits hard, just scale back the number of tasks. Maybe it becomes a 1-2-3 day instead. The whole point is that the framework remains a helpful tool, rather than becoming another source of rigid pressure and anxiety. The brilliance of the 1-3-5 rule really comes down to habit psychology. According to Charles Duhigg's golden rule of habit change, you keep the cue, which is sitting down at your desk, and you keep the reward, that great feeling of relief and accomplishment. But instead of your old routine of doom-scrolling social media to find that dopamine relief, your new routine becomes those 5 rapid-fire tasks. You're substituting a destructive routine with a highly productive launch sequence. And thanks to real-time neuroplasticity, the 1-3-5 rule literally turns progress into a pattern. By consistently using these 5 small wins to spark your dopamine pathways every single morning, you actually rewire your brain over time. You are training your basal ganglia to associate starting work with immediate reward, rather than agonizing dread. You basically learn to manufacture your own motivation. The neuroscience is absolutely clear here. Action precedes motivation, not the other way around. We have to stop waiting to feel ready and start engineering the neurochemistry of readiness. So take a look at your schedule for tomorrow. Bypass the overwhelm and ask yourself right now, what are your 5 rapid-fire tasks? Stop fighting your brain's engine and start giving it the spark it needs. Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.